Do you have to set it up again?
What'd you do?
Well, you were asking me if I, we were talking about regrets, like, if you're on the fine art side, maybe there's a little instability in income that has its own issues and problems.
Certainly.
And you look at the grass on the other side and you kind of might go like, oh, what if I was a commercial photographer? Or what if I was,
wedding photographer, whatever.
Yeah. Which you and I both know people that try and, bridge the gap between fine art and, make some money off of it. I've kind of done both, because I did a little bit preliminary, like back in my, late 20s, early 30s, where I had my day job, but didn't tax me creatively. So if anything, it kind of instigated when I got home and I was clocked out, I got to do whatever the hell I wanted. And that was sort of a beautiful space to be, because I had my weekly paycheck, and then I could just kind of go all out with the art. And, I didn't have a family, anything like that. So you can be completely self-absorbed up in your studio till 2 or 3 in the morning, listening to, guided by voices, and just, get into your drawings and paintings. And, it's a wonderful, wonderful time. And I do miss that. But, I had the luxury of not, I didn't need to make money off of it. But then, of course, we were all like having art shows back then. We were a tight little community in a small town. And I think those shows and the excitement of selling, and we were selling, because we weren't charging grand. We weren't charging $2,000 in the beginning. We were charging.
No, you were selling. I wasn't selling. You were. And Wayne and Sean and everybody else was selling. I wasn't, though.
Well, unfortunately, I think photography people always think they can do it. I think they belittle it, and because it's a print, it's not a one-off. And I'm sure you've, wrestled with all the rationale that people throw at you for why it's not a,
for my entire career.
They won't pay money for it, which is ludicrous, because, just like anything, the quality is the quality, and the vision is the vision. Yeah. So doing the art shows and things like that was great. But, I always had I never considered myself trying to, or considered the idea of making a living off of selling art, because I felt like I knew that I would feel that pressure, and you would be answering to someone, but sort of like that's your pure space, and you might have to do commissions of things you didn't want to do because you need $2,000, you need to make a mortgage or something, or if you have a family, I gotta get some new shoes for my kid or something. Speaking of kid, here's my little baby. Let me give my little baby a kiss. Sure. Good night.
Hi, Lauren.
And I liked my job, because I've always been working. I was like, I've never had that. Like, man, I need more time to paint and do my art or do more drawings. I would have loved that, but I just kind of took advantage of that in the off time, because I had that time to kind of burn. So it wasn't, I could do both, Yeah, and that just followed. And then ultimately, I think we started doing more and more art shows, and I was devoting more time to doing art. And then everything just kind of, just like any scene or any gallery or cluster of friends, or there's always that little window when it's a sweet spot. It's usually like 3 years in my experience. And then something changes. And with us, the gallery went belly up, and they ran off and owed people money and all that good stuff. So, and that was time for everyone to get, I think, basically. You stuck around because you were involved in a lot of other things.
I stuck around too long.
Well, it's easy. Look how, I've been back here 3 times. So Lauren and I decided let's go to New York. I had divorced too before I met Lauren. And so when I met her, I was kind of like, let's go. I don't want to do this here anymore. And so obviously going to New York, the last thing I was going to consider is I'm going to be an artist in New York. I'm going to make it up there. It's like,
That's the place to do it if you're going to do it anywhere.
Well, Yes, I can see that, but with me, I had already slept on someone's couch several years prior. I had gone out to Oregon with no money, and that didn't work out so good for me. I was one step away from being homeless, but luckily I had a buddy and I had a couch to sleep on. So when we went to New York, I was like, I'm getting a jobby job, like my graphic design job. I'm actually excited about what you could get in New York. So I worked really hard on a really bad book of work, like literally a 3x4 black, polyester faux leather zip up portfolio.
Oh yeah, we all own those.
That are the stock issue for art school kids in the 80s and early 90s, whatever.
Yeah, the 3-ring binders ones.
I threw all my stuff in there and thought it looked nice. I remember when I went to New York, there was a guy I went to art school with who I didn't know. He was younger than me, but I had met a lot of people in art school, and I was really into my illustration and graphic design is what my focus was, and I did well in those. So I guess people kind of knew me. I was kind of a big deal. It was a small art school.
You were a big fish in a small pond.
I was a big fish in a very, very small pond, but it was a great school. But he knew me, and he'd moved up to New York, and he was a really good designer. And I called him up, and I was like, "Hey, I'm up here in New York. Any leads you can give me or anything? I'm trying to find some work." And he was like, "Oh yeah, come by my office. And yeah, it'd be great to see how you're doing and stuff." And super nice guy. He worked with this other older fellow. Their office used to be the old apartment for Kiss. The guys in Kiss used to stay there when they were in New York City. It was like right by Madison Garden, 23rd Street. Anyway, is what it's called, Madison Park. And they looked at my stuff, and he unzipped it. This was his boss. He unzipped it and looked at it, and he's just doing the classic thing where you're rifling through. You're like, no, that'll never work. That'll never. Why is this in here? No. And just kind of giving, kind of going old school, sort of art instructor on me, which I needed. And he said, you need to, let me show you what a portfolio looks like. And he handed me something that was about, the size of a small book, literally, that was all printed and uniform and really tight and very slick looking and very manageable.
Polished.
And very polished. And that was what, but you have to know what the new way to promote yourself is, and so that was when I first started learning that. Never had to worry about that before. This is my first lesson in my long, venture in New York. Anyway, made a lot of decisions and edits and worked a lot of time to really develop this portfolio. So that was my first lesson. Anyway, got a respectable book together. I threw a lot of my fine art in the book and made it a book cover, or I took it and made it an illustration for an article. I kind of used some tricks so I could incorporate my own artwork in there just to kind of richen the design. And I a lot of logo work and stuff like that, which I love doing. It's it's like visual problem solving. So I think my brain, I'm kind of a hybrid. I can definitely go into the sort of world where you're just creating for yourself and you're going into your head and, kind of just creating what you see. But I also like the problem solving that comes with design and things of that nature. So, it's not too hard to go back and forth between the worlds. I feel like I've been way too far out of the art world now, which is, it'd be nice to get back into it. My life something's got to start changing a little bit so I can actually devote more time to it. Because you have to be able to really devote time to it. You have to be in your head, which I'm in my head anyway, but I'm also doing other things while I'm in my head. But to be in your head and sit there and stare at a canvas or a piece of paper and not wait, but just kind of let things come, you need time for that. And I'm a little out of practice.
I haven't actually gotten to ask you any questions, so let me... Yeah,
ask me, because I ramble.
Yeah, and it's fine. I'm perfectly good with the ramble.
Which might be fun, because that gives you lots of stuff to edit out.
I don't edit out. I let people ramble.
Or mash together.
Yeah. All right. So one of the things that a lot of people wonder when they think of creative people is, of course, how did they become creative? So, how did you even get to it? Family, teacher, what was the experience that sort of brought you to even being creative?
Oh, well... I'm the youngest two older brother and sister. And when they were at school, when I was 3 and 4, I think my mother was just drawing something to just like a mother would just put a tinker toy in front of you, or a juice box, or a stick, whatever. And she just drew a picture of a Superman on the back of an envelope, and then also a picture of like a witch. She was just drawing things out of her head, but she did it in a certain way, and I memorized how she did that. So then I would copy her, and that was my first, I was really interested in how you could draw something on paper and make it be real. So I was kind of off to the races after that. I always drew, always. It was just very peaceful. I could spend hours just sitting there drawing. I remember I submitted a drawing of my dog when I was in first grade, and it was it was much better than the rest of the class, and the teacher put it up, so I got that little bit of "you did good" kind of thing. And so I was like, sweet, man, I think I can do this, but again, I was first grade, so I never even thought of anything. And after that, I was always known for someone who did art. And then I would meet other people that did art, and we always just kind of bonded, And so I was in the club, man, from early on. It was great, and and it was always exciting to see people that were really good. When you come across them, you're like, wow. I remember one time we had a foreign exchange student in high school. He's from Korea, and I don't even think he barely spoke English, but I remember he drew like a shoe. It was 10 times better than anything I get. It was unreal. And I was like, wow, it's amazing how there are people out there that are just super good at this. And it's really intimidating, but also really exciting too, because, you want to be around those people, and you want to see how they do it. And you want to I enjoy seeing, good art and people that are creative, and the way they think. It's so different, and the way they handle things is so different. I love that.
I love how you're saying they as though you're not one of them.
I guess what I'm saying is, where I was kind of going with that is to me, it's not a competitive thing. It's sort of a healthy competition. You're like, when I was in art school, actually, I went to here locally, which had a small art program at the time, and I took it with what I thought was, the best teacher there. I liked their work the best, and I took all the classes I could with them, and then kind of ran out of classes. And I had always wanted to go to a proper art school, and so whenever I just basically dropped out of college here and went to England for a little bit, and then I applied to a real art school back in the States when my visa ran out to come back, and I got in. And the whole reason I went to that school, East Carolina University School of Art, is there was an arts and literary magazine, which I had worked on a piddly one here, but theirs was really good looking, and it showed examples of all the different artists and illustrators and fabric designers, things like that. And there was 2 or 3 pieces that were just stunning in there, and I was like, this looks like a real art school. Like, you could really learn. You'd be around some really cool stuff. I want to learn. I want to know how they did that. I remember I saw like a multimedia painting, like a collage painting. It looked like there was probably 20 different materials used on it. It was amazing. I didn't even think there was a sole of a shoe stuck into the canvas. It was just, badass. And I was like, I want to go there, man. Luckily, I got in, and I wanted to see, and I actually met the person who did that painting. It's so funny. It's like you just want to get near them and go, wow, I want to see more of your work. I want to see. And then you pick up little nuances and things they did, like what's so striking about it. And look at the way they use the color, and look at the line materials. Look how bold they are. You can just tell they're just, that the way I see it, it looks like a very bold piece, and those things influence you. You pick up on the good parts, try to.
All right, so you moved on after school, and as I said before, one of the interesting things for me is that you are an incredibly talented artists, so like specifically in the human form, like you can illustrate, draw, whatever, paint the human form really amazingly, and you sort of have made the choice, the conscious choice, to not perpetually be a fine artist, but to choose to go into the commercial arts. No knock on that. It's a smart choice in many ways. But I wonder about, like, do you ever wonder, like, was it a smart choice? Was it the right choice for you, or are you perfectly good with that choice?
I think in a lot of ways, I never felt any, and I don't know if this is good or not, but sometimes you follow the path of least resistance, and I'm guilty of that sometimes.
I do not do that. I have no idea what
Well,
you're talking about.
I never. I mean, the graphic design came very, like, I enjoyed it. I do enjoy it. I still do. I would still do it if I were to quit my job now. I would still love to do design for people as well as art, but it came easy for me, and I enjoyed it. And I guess that's why, because I enjoyed it, and I like the problem solving, and I like the visual. I had the visual background to kind of add fuel to it, and the decision making over the years. Obviously, the older you get, I feel like your creative decision making becomes much more streamlined, and you have to sweat less. You kind of you think more than you need to physically do. But anyway, so I think probably that's why. And I think New York kind of sealed the deal, because honestly, when I went up there, we were getting low on funds, and I was terrified of, not having rent. I wasn't that close yet, but there was no income. I had to go away. I had a part-time job that was only going to be for a couple of weeks. It was like a temp job designing, and I had to go back home at the time because my dad had gotten sick. I went for like 3 weeks. He had to go through some chemo and things like that, and it just happened. And when I came back, I didn't have that job anymore, and I was like really pretty terrified. I talked to people, they're like, oh, this, when you do temp work, it's kind of, you might have 4 months, you might have a year and a half, and then you might be off for 4 or 5 months. It's okay. And I was like, I don't like that. I was really kind of scrounging and trying to find something. I got a call back from a place that I had done some design work. And the funny thing was, is they did financial, like high finance. They did design and advertising. And most of all their clients were like high finance, like global finance, which just even hearing those words, you can imagine how completely opposite brain that is. The irony of it is, and I'm hoping I'm using the word irony correctly, but is that world at the time, I don't know what they're like now. There's been a lot that's happened since then. This is about 2006. They really kind of a sophisticated audience. They you're not showing them gold coins and money trees and things like. It's very. Imagine the paintings in their walk-in area, the foyer of their buildings and things like that. It's like it's very sort of abstract and so the aesthetic I felt like was kind of in that realm, and also the people I worked for were really cool, really nice, really funny. An English fellow who lived in Africa and Italy, and he plays in a band. His wife is a world music singer. He was my boss. And I worked with another guy who cussed like a sailor and would go sneak off and have a drink at lunchtime and come back. But him and I got along really good, I guess, because we both like cussing and drinking. And so those were my bosses, and they loved the work that I did. They saw my book. And the funny thing was, the reason I got that job was because of some artwork that I had done. That was my fine art stuff in my book. I told you about the, putting it in a book cover here and, article layout design here. My boss, that's what he saw. He loves art, and it was my toe in, really. So it worked out well. Anyway, they called me back, and I got on there, and the money was really good. I'd never seen money like that. And granted, it takes you, once you realize New York is, it's a different pay scale there, but still, I was like, I've never had money before, and so that was I'm not gonna lie, that was very tantalizing, so I stuck with it.
Well, I mean, when it comes to, okay, so like keep in mind, I come from the fine arts background, and especially in photography, so that's also a big sort of kicker on this one, is that oftentimes photographers, if they're fine art photographers and they do commercial work, they're seen as sort of selling out kind of thing. But that's not so much so true in the graphic arts and also the painting. I know a lot of artists, so whether they're sculptors or painters or printmakers who do graphic arts, commercial arts, for to make money, to be able to just afford to do what they want to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you look at any of the design annuals and look at the photography, and they've got all the categories. They have editorial. They've got obviously the very expensive studio stuff. But even I worked with a couple of photographers up there. If I comped up an idea and the client bought off on it, I would be the art director of that project, and we would source a photographer or whatever. And I did this a couple of times. I didn't do it a lot. Worked with this really amazing photographer. He did a lot of studio still life things, and he was recreating the stuff that I had comped up in Photoshop. And his work, I remember he did this. He had several books, and I can't think of his name. He's a French fellow, but he's got sort of a Russian sounding name. Anyway, he did these sort of shoes made out of pieces of these lilies and exotic flowers, and he would make these women's shoes out of them, and he would construct them. He would shoot them and then construct them in Photoshop, but they were just amazing. They looked like grand fairy shoes. They were pretty phenomenal. That was one little thing he did. Of course, he did 500 other things because he was a working photographer. But the guy, his skill was phenomenal, and his work was really phenomenal. But he got some money to do that project, which keeps everything going in his studio. And it was just fun to work with people like that. I did it a couple times, and yeah, they were pretty well rounded, I would say. A little of this, a little of that. Then I've always got my fine art stuff, and I think maybe that's something there. We're all artists, but I feel like that everybody, like even my boss, he was a musician. It's like, this is my day job, and I care about it, and I take care and pride in what I do, and he does. He did and he does. But 8:00 tonight, I've got my friends coming over, or I've got a gig in Harlem, and we're playing it, and I'm so excited about that too. I don't think anyone ever just in the creative world just does that, and maybe it's not like I'm bagging groceries and I come home and I'm like, no, I'm going to keep bagging groceries. I'm going to I'm going to bag them on my own time. It's like nothing wrong with bagging groceries, but I know it's not the most inspiring career.
Okay, wait a minute. You mentioned that you are an art director and you're doing all these other things, and I've sort of used different terminology to describe what you do. Graphic arts, commercial arts, all these things. So, like, how do you define what you do? You're currently a what?
Well, and the titles are all a little wonky because, I mean, first and foremost, I am a graphic designer / artist, from concept to finished stuff. But in the industry I'm in, you could be a creative director and have people like me who are designers and they make things. The monkeys that do the work. And you're the sort of person that says, no, do the blue one. Yeah, I have this idea. I see fish and they're, flying in the sky.
Do you do that to people you work with?
No. See, I don't do that. I haven't been in a situation where I'm that guy. But at the same time, so I kind of am, in a weird way, I'm kind of creative director over myself. It's confusing. At the end of the day, my job is to think of ideas. I write sometimes. It's like I think of ideas. I work with writers. I work with my boss. We think of ideas. In my current job now, what I do is I'm the person who brings it to life and visualizes it. That's what my job is. But I also might come up with the idea, or I might take someone else's idea and go, I think what would work here is we're going to do this, and I take it and I kind of let it stew and I kind of create from that. So and it it's exciting, and I mean, and honestly, I've kind of gotten to the point now where it's like I hope this doesn't come to fruition, but I'll just use this as an example. It's like, we could get an account with a company that makes toilet brushes, and I would be genuinely excited to like try and make something interesting from that. It's like, my daughter the other day, my 9-year-old, it's like, what'd you do this morning? I come home for lunch, I ride my bike home, and what'd you do today? And I was like, was it fun? I was like, oh, we did this and this. Oh, wow, that sounds boring. And I was like, well, it does sound boring, but it's my job to make it interesting, or my job is horrible. But, it's not a horrible job. It's a great job. And I have to figure out a way to make it good and interesting for me. And some are better than others, don't get me wrong. But, like, that's kind of the deal. And if it's really horrible, I just try to get it done as efficiently and quickly as possible and just get it the hell out of the way. Like, wrap the burger up and get it the hell out, right behind that, something completely new is behind that. And that's cool too. That's a new canvas, if you were.
It sounds to me like part of the thing that sort of entices you to doing this is actually the sort of the collaboration and the process of sort of working with other people to, make the ideas bigger and better and broader, whatever, than maybe if you did it just by yourself might not have been as if,
Well,
whatever.
I tell you what, it's just like anything. Yes, it is better to work with people that can make the work better and you work alongside of them. But sometimes...
sometimes they get in the way of it too.
Sometimes they completely get in the way, and it's bad ideas. And you're like, but that's okay too. I mean, ultimately, you go back in your head and you sit at your desk and you sketch or research or find, or on your bike ride home, you're thinking, or you're laying in bed right before you go to sleep. It's like you watch something, you see something, you hear something, and then it, kind of fuels the thing. So I think the thing that I enjoy the most is that discovering what's going to be the smart solution, the good looking, the cool solution, what's going to be the not just fluffery and design for design's sake. Working with smart people up in New York that were senior and they really knew their shit, they really helped me kind of craft. It's kind of like when you go to art school. Oh, wow, you can draw an apple. It looks like an apple. Big fucking deal. I need you to work harder. What are you really doing here? And that first time you get that taste, you're like, oh, I see. I get it. I see what you mean.
Well, one of the things that I always wonder about with like designing for stuff, because I've done a little bit of it over the course of my career too, is that you have to often like make 3, let's say, potential pitches to somebody, one that you love, one that you think they'll love, and then one that's some sort of hybrid between them. And that to me was always the most painful, because I would generally fall in love with one design and be like, this is the shit. This is the perfect design. And if they choose any of the others, I'm going to be crushed. And they always choose one of the others.
Well, I tell you what, and you're exactly right. And I say this to myself, and I say this to the folks I work with too. I go, don't put it in front of them unless you're okay with it. The first time, it's the purest time you get to show anyone anything. Spend all of your creative energy and then some there, and just really power through. Don't show them sketches. Show them something that's further along, but show them 3 ideas. But they don't have to be my favorite, my middle favorite, and the crappy one that I think, they want me to do. And in most cases, you're okay with the 3 of them. You have a favorite, maybe a strong second. The third one, maybe that one you could call your straw man. Like, all right, I'm just going to put that in there. They can nix that one. But I'm okay. I like it though. It's not bad. I won't because I did bad over here, and they're not seeing that. No one's seeing that. That's
okay.
crap.
How many like sketches and stuff do you make up before to get to the 3 that you do give to a client?
It depends. It depends on if you're talking about a whole brand campaign, a whole brand new look and feel for someone, involving a whole new logo that you've created. If that's the case, you've usually already started thinking about it by the time you start doing what the brand look of them, what the attitude is. You and your writers come up with a tagline or just an idea or a concept that is sort of their tone. And then, I forget what the question was. Is you're basically you're kind of working on all these things.
How many sketches how many like tests and sketches and tries do you have to do to come up with 3 really strong ones to put in front of a client?
I don't know. I guess that's difficult to answer because I know with me typically my first idea I have right in the creative meeting, the first idea, like half the time, maybe a third of the time, that's the one we end up going with. And wow, if it's a pure thought and I don't know, I'm kind of in that place where I'm very receptive to what I'm just being fed, and then I kind of go, I think at this. But the other times, I'll still have an idea, but that's going to be the one. And I start working. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, this is a better way to do it. And then somebody will give some input, and I'll go, well, that's smarter. That's actually better. And then I'll look at that very first thing I put down, and it might not even get shown. So it depends really. It's like sometimes it's very, I guess, long and short of it is it's a very organic process, and so it's definitely not math. The one thing mathy about it, I would say, is you always typically, like you said before, you give them 3. That's usually standard. 5's too many.
I think I actually learned that from you.
2 is lazy.
Well, it's too
1,
few,
if you're very famous, you can do 1.
Yeah. Here, this is the design I give you.
Yeah.
That's your
and
choice.
You actually typically, you only do 1 when it's like a freebie for some friend or something.
Or a nonprofit.
Or something. And it's like, here. Boy, those are fun. Because then you really just you don't even have to concern yourself. You're like, what's my idea here? And they're not paying me for it. But at the same time, I don't have, let me just see what I can come up with. I'm just going to give them this. And see if that. But then sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, can you change the color? Can you do green?" I don't know.
Do you feel the need still to make your fine arts also, or it is because one thing I always wonder about, like people that go into the commercial arts, because you're still being creative. You still are doing all the things that you were taught and you learned in school, and the things you desire, which is be creative, make things, all that kind of stuff. So like, is that enough of a sort of scratching that creative itch?
In a way, I guess. Some days, yes, not in the pure sense of art for art's sake, but I would say you're using those muscles, so you're keeping loose, but sometimes, you're not straining them quite like you would if you're doing personal work. Because the funny thing is because I think with personal work, well, I tell you what, let me put it this way, with the graphic design, communication arts in general, your client is the patron, and they're trying to speak to an audience, and so the audience is kind of patrons as well. So you're solving for them, and when you're creating work purely for yourself, you're kind of solving for yourself, which is that's a whole, that's a very different thing. I think I know with me, I don't know how it is. Some people, I think, they've got a whole different process. I think with me, because I would kind of create things from inside that I saw in my mind, or you know what I mean. It wasn't. They weren't tactile yet. They weren't things that I could observe, or I couldn't photograph them. I couldn't. It was more like just pulling something from inside out. And not to say that's not what other art is either, but I'm speaking for me, I guess. That's
this
really
entire
challenging.
Conversation is just about you, by the way.
Well, yeah. It's really challenging, but also really good. It's a different kind of work. I don't know. Yeah, it's just a different. Your client sounds horrible. You're not your client, but
it's the way we phrase it.
Your answer. You're solving your own sort of art, creative conundrums because you want to communicate them. You want to you want to represent something that you're or that you're thinking and put it out there, and you want people to see it.
What is interesting, I mean, quite honestly, like your graphic design work, probably more people have seen your graphic design work than ever will see my artwork. Like, because that kind of stuff is sort of inherent in people's lives and they don't even realize it's there.
Yeah, exactly. And you see it and you're like, you might respond to it and go, oh, that's really cool. I remember when one of the first things I did it was probably the first year I was working with that group. we would take on little side projects through our group as well. We didn't always just do.
Sorry, that group.
When I worked for my company in New York.
Okay.
Small group. We were a small group that did the financial stuff, right? Well, we also, because the folks I worked with, they'd worked in the industry and they knew people from like all over the world, everywhere. And we would get people, friends from Italy or something, and then they'd bring in a client. I remember we did this client. We had a client, he brought in a friend of ours, Matthew, Ely Coffee, the Italian coffee espresso company, very designed, like their logo was done by some famous Italian designer, and he did it with a brush pen. He did one, or something to like that. Their espresso cup was designed by an Italian sculptor, and it had it looked like a Certs, little white Certs ring for the little where your fingers held the tight,
Yeah.
the little, the espresso cup, and it was just so your fingers would just touch, like that was thought about. So very high end, or I should say
Elegant,
very appreciative of the arts. They were going to do this launch event in Manhattan to just kind of drum up the name and interest in Ely Coffee, and they were going to start it in New York City. Did this project. So I worked on that for weeks and weeks, months. And there was another designer who was working on it, but then I really got into it, and I was doing illustration work. These were all concepts. And then I was doing, some other kind of photo collage stuff. I just had a blast with it, and my boss was just like, go, 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 go. We did so much good work for them. Anyway, they ended up going with one concept that they really love, which used those cups on a white background. There's a white cup on a white background. And then we did all these things with it. And literally I would just sit there and just think of ideas with it. And I'd talk with my boss and we'd come up, but he just let me go. And they produced a lot of these posters for the event of the creative that we did with the cups. So, turn into a butterfly. We stack them on top of each other and have bamboo growing up the side of it. We would put it in a field of grass with all these other cups, and caterpillars were crawling into it. I just kind of went, my boss would throw a word what about a caterpillar? What about, and I would envision what that would look like. I put the two cups upside down like a cracked egg, and a little chick comes out of it. And we were just doing all this just bonkers, not bonkers, but just kind of surreal, fun stuff. And they went with all of it. So we're in this 4-story mall, Time Warner Mall there, in the Time Warner building right there at Central Park in the corner. And a big installation in there. And we had these super long, 3-story long posters. And I just was like, well, how am I going to do a long, skinny poster? Because we were talking about hanging from the railings, these things. And I was like, what if you were to just drop a cup and have it spin round and round? And I was thinking, well, what if there's a guy just doing somersaults on the side of the cup? So there's 10 cups spinning around and around on a poster with a guy in a somersault pose. So he looks like he's flipping and falling down. And they're like, good, we'll do that. That sounds good. So it was probably $20,000, $10,000, $15,000 poster, just banging that stuff out. We need something for the elevator stand. It's all right, we got this cup theme. What if we just stack all the cups up right when you come out of the elevator, but they'll be 3 feet wide, these cups, and have words on the side of them. And they're like, okay. So they did that. They had them fabricated and they did the cups. So there's a series of other things. There's some art installations there. It was really cool. The painter Rosenquist had done a series of canisters for them, and he was there and he autographed them, so I got one of his cans autographed somewhere. So that was a job I did 6 months after I was there. And I was like, that was cool, man.
Those are very rare, though.
Never did it again. Never did anything like that again. But it was cool. That was fun. I kind of felt like that was probably how back in the day, or even, of course now, the kind of rock star graphic design world. But, I'm not in that world. I'm in the bread and butter, especially now being out of New York. It's very much, but I like it though. But that was fun. That was really cool.
Well, I mean, that's another thing. So a lot of people get into the creative industries because they like the the people and they like the community and the tribe and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of us want to be famous and we want to be known and all this. But a lot of graphic designers and commercial artists are in it just because they want to be able to use their creative talents to be able to make a living. So basically, they want to like their job.
Oh, and that's funny you say that, because the whole reason I even do, I do like, I'm lucky, man. I really like my job, and I realize that's rare. It really is. And that's a wonderful thing. You don't like every day, but, I remember being really frustrated doing paintings, and drawings. I'm like, I don't know shit I want to do today. Mm-hmm. Damn it. I need to start something new because I'm in a rut, but yeah, no, I really do. And yeah, well, especially in New York, like the graphic design and advertising world and like New York and stuff, the little bits I was in and around was also really horrible. Like the bigger the account, the more money, just the more horrible the people were, and the
You're talking about the clients.
What? No, well, not. I mean, no. Even in the office, like, you've got account people. You got people that project managers who you know how it is. It's like they're not.
I don't know how it is.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you how it is.
Thank you.
They're not creative. They are in a creative world, so it's a bit like
bean counters.
Well, not accountant like that, more like handling an account, like a project manager. I guess maybe that's a better term for us. But they could be horrible, and like, just like any office, you've got just people just making it harder to do that. And we just want to make good stuff, and we don't want to deal with all that bullshit. But when money's involved, you do have to deal with the bullshit sometimes. So, but yeah, enjoying the work is the thing. I know the people that I worked with, the ones that I was around every day for 10 years, and I still speak to regularly, even though I've been gone from New York for a while, is they love the work they did. They did, and they hated bullshit, and they didn't want to deal with it. They were very honest, very talented, and they are, and that rubbed off on me. And they understood sometimes you're working on stuff that's not as fun or not as good, or exciting, I should say. But they always, here's my take on it. Here's what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to give you the best I got, And so I think that sort of work method, just way of working, was instilled in me from those guys.
Okay, wait, you said something about like being in a rut in painting. As an artist, if I'm in a rut, okay, fine, I'm in a rut. But if as a commercial artist, if you're in a rut, you still have a deadline.
Oh, well, here's a good thing, is because you also have to consider that you're typically not working on a project usually. Unless you only have one client, then you very much will get in a rut. There have been times when we had a main client where you feel like you're having to remake the wheel again, time and time and time, and it's got to be a better wheel and a different wheel. Why aren't you making that? Yeah, that's hard. That is hard. But typically, you're not in it long enough to get into the rut. It does happen, and you gotta work through it.
Okay, well, give me a sense of it. So, like, you're not necessarily maybe like your daily rituals, but like over the course of a week, let's say, like, how many jobs do you complete in a week or a day? So like, are you working on like multiple different jobs in order to stay fresh on a job, or do you like focus on one job for 10 days in a row? And then of course, like, how long a deadline do you have for a lot of these things?
Well, it all depends, because we might do something that's a smaller client and they just need something like a new logo or whatever, and maybe we just don't have a lot of time that we can give to that because the budget is lower budget, like a whatever. And so those you're not going to spend as much time on. You're going to do just as good a work, but you're not going to be able to have the luxury of spending weeks on it. And then you have some jobs, and if you're talking about describing what a rut might be like, we had a client for a senior living. They do senior living communities, which is like the big
retirement homes.
That's the old word.
Yes,
now it's senior living community, and they're not retirement homes. Still, it feels like retirement home to me, but it doesn't look like it, and they're way more expensive.
Oh God, yes, I know.
Infinitely more expensive.
My parents are getting old. I know. We've been looking into it.
But very nice, and those 1-2% of the population are really going to have a lovely time there, and kudos to them. Anyway, so they're a great client, and so we will produce a logo and a look and a feel and a brochure for that community, and then we'll get another community, and we'll do that as well. Well, one time I got 4 or 5 of those in a row. And I'm talking, here's a blank piece of paper. It is called Acorn Farms. That's not the real name.
It's good. It's good. No legal
and
issues.
We need a logo and a look and feel, and then we'll need a brochure piece, and then which is going to be chock full of photography. We haven't built the place yet, so you got to go in stock land. Which I will say, stock photography has made huge advancements in how they are showing senior living nowadays versus probably 5-10 years ago.
Well, stock photography, that's a whole industry that on the one hand, like on your side of it as a graphic designer, amazing. Like the resources and the prices of them are incredible for your side. Yeah. Me as a photographer, stock photography, it's the bottom of the barrel these days. I mean, they pay nothing. It's nowhere near as lucrative an industry as it once was for photographers.
Well, you would know about exactly like how that industry how it's changed and what it's gone to.
I worked for a stock photography agency.
Did you really?
We used to do like deals of like $25,000 for rights to an image, and worldwide ad campaigns or books, for $10,000.
Yeah, if you're in a big campaign, it pays well. I always feel bad for the people that go, okay, teenager holding an apple, teenager throwing an apple, 2 teenagers both holding the apple. One takes a bite of the apple. Like, I don't know how they do that.
I know a guy who did that for a living and made millions.
There has to be something in there, because the funny thing is you're going through this stuff, you're like, well, somebody's using this. And I know there's an article about teenagers who don't eat enough apples, or teenagers that fight while grabbing the last apple. Or
I literally assisted him one day because I wanted to learn the trick of like, how does he do this? Like, the dude was making millions.
Yeah.
And I showed up one day and to assist him. He had a bodybuilder guy like with big biceps there, and he put the guy with the big biceps in front of a colored background, and then he put an apple on the bicep and took the picture against a green background.
Sure.
Changed the color background to blue, took it again. Changed the color background to red, took it again.
Yep.
And then he changed the apple out to a glass of milk, and then he changed all the background colors again. And he just like did it like a machine. He's just like, what do people want? That's what I'll take a picture of.
Well, it's like, do they get it like a little set list?
Yes.
I'm sure.
Well, they do.
I don't know how they keep it. We need muscle guy with fruit, and we need multi. Let's get mad on that.
No, they really do. Actually, the stock photography agencies, the old ones. I mean, I don't know what they do these days.
Yeah.
But they used to actually get what they would do is when people give in requests for images, they would keep a catalog of all the different requests and sort of say, they would be like, okay, there's a lot of requests for these images that we don't have.
Oh, right.
Go make some of these.
Yeah.
And they would actually give it out to their photographers and say, go produce these because we have need for these.
Yeah. I tell you, man, I've got to the photo shoots are a whole can of worms to bring out, and you love it because it's original photography. You're working with a photographer, and a lot of times, a lot of stuff I work on now, it might be more lifestyle things. So you've got talent, or actors called talent, and all these scenarios, and here they are at the beach, and here they are walking through the woods, and here they are eating at a table, and it's great, but it's a lot of work. There's 500 images of them eating at the table. You edit it down, and because I'm not a photographer and I'm not that client, that is hard for me to narrow it down to that. I mean, I'll use my aesthetic eye. I'll use what I feel like my tools are to like get what I think is, but inevitably it's like, oh no, we have to have the so-and-so. Oh no, we can't use those anymore because they don't have that kitchen anymore. There's always that kind of stuff going on.
Sure.
The funny thing is I find myself now going, boy, I can just go to stock photography and I can find something beautiful, and it might be the $500 image, which is very expensive for most clients. That's a lot of money. But you are getting, you're getting it ready, piece of photo, boom. No art directors on set, no talent, no people, it's like, boom, done.
And immediate, like no waiting either.
Lighting is already great. Everything's, and immediately. So it's like bang, bang, bang. But I've gotten to the point now, unless it's something like a purely creative concept. It's not, people walking through the woods or people on the beach or kids playing or something like that. If it's like a whole new thing, of course you have to construct that. You got to figure that out. And a lot of times I can handle it with stock photography for the clients that we have,
That saddens me greatly, but that's fine.
Well, and I think it has to do with, I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of reasons. I think probably money.
Of course. I mean, original photography for any sort of advertising or commercial reasons is expensive, no doubt.
Developing like a logo for, just happens to be one of the things I'm working on now. We work on a bunch of things, but this is just in my head right now. Taking something that's maybe not very interesting sounding and making it like a graphic sort of exploratory problem solving, something exciting to work on. I remember there was one of these communities and they wanted a horse theme because it's right near these stables and famous stables and lots of equestrian sort of, aficionados and whatnot. So I started doing some sketches and then I had some ideas. So I typically will sketch just a little bit, but I always have to build it on the computer. I've gotten it's like my third hand, I could say.
So, okay, wait, stupid technical thing. What programs do you use?
Well, when I'm doing, most times anything graphic based is Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator. So I've been doing that for about, 20 years. So I've gotten that. That's been a fun program to work with because it's so precise and shape making and things like that. That's been the most useful to me. Well, for that. And, Photoshop for general imaging, things of that nature. But most of the time for comps and things like that, where you comp up an idea, usually the photo or the image is a little adjustment here and there and it's fine. I don't like overly manipulated stuff in Photoshop. But yeah, I would say Illustrator for graphics and art, and InDesign just for text, layouts, things like that. But mostly all Illustrator now. Honestly, I've been getting away with pretty much doing all that, and I like it.
Okay, so but wait, now has you and or the company you work for been doing things like 3-dimensional stuff, as maybe even like 3D printed things? Like, so are you using any of these sort of contemporary technologies?
No, we're very kind of old school with all that stuff. But what we do is animation and video storyboards. We'll have people create the animation. Now, I used to do a lot of that when I was in New York, like the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years with our client. They wanted an idea for basically a piece you could look at, but you didn't have to have the sound on. And it was for advertising to these, not traders on the floor, but people that are on their computers and they're doing, but they're not listening to the sound.
Sure.
And so we did this text animation idea, and I got the idea to like do sort of concrete animation of a phrase where it's kind of a classic thing. I think they call it concrete poetry. Where the words will sort of illustrate what it's saying.
Right.
So I storyboarded that out, and I kind of got into this real feverish. And the next frame is this, and next frame is this, and I'm doing it all in Illustrator, just kind of mapping it out. And then we would get an animation house to create it, and it was really cool. And then they loved it, so we ended up doing like 10 of those. And then the more we did them, the next series just got better, and we did more. And then we got a more high-end animation company, and so I would storyboard them, and then they would really take it to the next level. So that was super cool, like just kind of building these little mini animated features, like a minute long, that would tell sort of whatever story you needed to tell. And so that was really cool. I brought that down here with me, that way of doing those sorts of pieces. So we've dabbled a little bit in that,
Well, I mean, the reason why I ask is because like a lot
more
of
so than
yeah, but like a lot of students and a lot of young designers and stuff, they get enamored with like technologies, and in school it's always pushed like, oh, you need to learn the newest thing, the best thing, all this. But like it sounds to me like really the thing, like if you wanted to be generally a successful commercial artist, is to basically find a skill set that you enjoy doing, that you do well, and be a master of that one thing, or just one thing and maybe surrounding things.
Oh, yeah. No, I would totally agree with that. I think, whether you're a technical sort of savant at something, that's you're going to do fine. If you're someone, there aren't a lot of people that know how to do very high quality animation and things like that. But on the opposite end of that, you could almost say you need to understand concepts and ideas, but you have to be able to tell me what they are. I'm sorry, you have to be able to show me what they are in some method or form. We can get someone to do this, but you have to be able to be proficient enough to show me the idea, whatever that might be, storyboard it, whatever, sketch it. Wow. But it can't be. So I guess it's kind of like if you're a sculptor, you either have to weld or you have to work with wood or work with particles, whatever a sculptor might do. And the material, you do have to kind of have some kind of skill in one of those mediums. You might not be able to do them all. So it's like with me, I couldn't animate. I don't need to know how to animate because there are people that animate, but I love working with them and having ideas. And then they go, oh, what if we did it this way?
Well, that's what I'm sort of getting to, is like a lot of people these days. Okay, so like I was teaching graphic design, and we often said that we were teaching generalists. Like, so we were people that came out of our school had a general understanding of Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign, and maybe a 3D program and some stuff like this. But they weren't really specialized in any one great thing and like masterful at that one thing. But so that's what I'm sort of asking is like, are you, between you and the people you've worked with, are graphic designers commercial artists these days, are they masters of one thing and then sort of, or are they all generalists? So like basically, are we teaching them the right way? Should they be generalists or should they be masters?
Well, I tell you what, all those people that you just described are in that field. Typically, someone who can dabble a little bit in some of these programs, or they understand it a little bit, but they're more idea people. And if they're really good at ideas and they can steer people who know how to weld or know how to use Photoshop or know how to animate and push them and go, no, this is what okay, yeah, that's it. Then there's a job for them. But they actually didn't make anything. They were the visionary. So, but then you've got the technical school kind of slant where someone has to know how to do the timing and the editing to get this into 30 seconds for this animation piece in sync with the voiceover and the music, and it's like there's a real technical craft there. So it's like they're all it's what, it's kind of like this, Matt. It's like the theater or something. You got the director, you've got the actors, and you've got the stage props and the people. It's like there's a job for all of them in there. So are you a director or are you a stage hand? You need them all. So
well, for instance, like I could think about the journalists right now. A lot of journalists who went into journalism school, they came out as really eloquent writers. They're now being asked to also go out on assignment and take photos and make videos along with their photo assignments or with their writing assignments. So it's this kind of like idea that's very contemporary, that basically like if you're creative in one way, you sort of have to like be able to do a lot of things.
I tell you, I think it's good that you guys sent people out of your school with a working knowledge of some of those things they're going to see, because you do have to like understand what a timeline is in animation and in film and video, and I know what that looks like. So I'm familiar with it. I'm not on Mars when I look at that, and so it's absolutely good. But I think the bigger thing is, for me or for an artist, is being able to receive and digest and spit out an idea that's your creative output. Now, if you can also go, oh, and I know what this will look like, illustrate it, or I know what this will sound like, I make it. I think the other way, just being having technical savvy, you're a craftsperson in a lot of ways, which is, it's in its own art form in a way, or it very much is its own art form.
Well, and that's sort of something I'm thinking about, which is like, if you were looking at another graphic designer, let's say, their work and all this, would you be admiring the craftsmanship or the idea more? Like, what's the thing that makes you go, oh, they're talented?
I think the craft is the icing, and the idea and the concept is the cake. And it's like, you're like,
I really love icing. I'm not sure which is better, which one in that metaphor.
Well, that's fair. I saw this video it was kind of like a video case study for a company out of London, and they had rebranded the London Symphony, and they did everything from logo to custom typeface to this poster series to big, beautiful 3D animation, abstract animation that looks like, I'm sure you've seen things like this. It looks like bubbles and fireflies and things sort of imploding on each other. Just, they make those magnificent things in sort of 3D animation, like really high-end stuff that it's probably billions of gigabytes. They came up with this whole, visual catalog of what the London theater, sort of this campaign was going to look like. And it was beautiful. And then even the way they filmed the case study, and all the type was a sort of basic sans serif kind of fat typeface, white type on a black background. But then imagine a conductor dragging his, I call it a wand or a stick. What do you call the thing?
Oh God, the conductors.
The wand.
Conductors. Yeah, wand, stick.
Wand? Imagine them dragging it through sort of wet paint through the letter P at just such an angle that it just trailed off like you would, if it was sitting on a white pudding and you just run your finger through it. And it was just like, it was beautiful. And that's how they did the letters. And so then they'd take that type, and this is all shown in this video of how that they came about with that. And it would say like, Bach or Stravinsky, just real big in that typeface with like the sort of abstract blob, like I just described, the bubbles and the fireflies, is made with the marks that the conductor, when he's waving his arm.
I just checked it up on Google. It's called a conductor's baton.
Baton. His motion, his movement is all about motion and movement of sound, and then visualizing it. And it would be inspired by his movement from a Stravinsky piece or something like that. So that would be the piece of art in the center. It was just absolutely stunning. Like the whole work was very inspired. You see stuff like that. Boy, I'd love to do something like that. And if you get a chance, definitely take it. Or if you have to work on the toilet brush thing like I spoke of earlier.
Sure. Well,
sometimes
okay, but my question was though, so like,
but what was your question?
You're
very distracted.
The question was, are you sort of like, what's more desirable / like, so like if you were looking at somebody else's works, are you more admiring and envious of their idea or their technical skill? Which in reality, I probably answered my own question with that.
Well, I'm going to be a bastard and say both. I want to see a really good idea.
Well, of course, we all
put
want
together
that.
Really well.
We all want that, but I mean, devoid of like the concept of perfection. But I mean, in reality, though, we sort of already touched on it, which is the idea that skills can always be learned, but being creative and being sort of insightful and thoughtful and all that can't really be learned. Like you either have that or you don't. It can be honed, but it can't be like taught.
I think that is the coolest for me, most inspiring is like, how did they think of that? That just looks like something that somebody wouldn't think of, and it's just, that's amazing. It's almost like I love seeing that. I love seeing a new idea, and you realize that's that's the diamond. That's the thing that everyone's looking for. Creatives, you, me, all of us, and when you see someone just do a, and it doesn't have to be a brand new color that's never been seen. It's not like a unicorn so much. It's like, that's just people on a beach. Like, how many times have I seen people on a beach? Why is that so fucking good? And it's like, well, it's in black and white. It looks like it was shot at night, and then they shine a big spotlight on them. And for some reason, there are, you know what I mean? It's like they just did something unexpected to it that.
Oh, absolutely.
That you urge, and it might be very minimal, or it might be opulent. It's overly busy. Way too many things going on. Every decision they made is something you would not do, and all of it together is just like a beautiful.
Oh, yeah. I always think of like utilitarian design because like I grew up with like Heller plates and all kinds of designer like dishware and things like this. And so like I'm always amazed that like a dish is a dish. It literally is just a surface on which we put food. Mm-hmm. But yet there are millions of people designing them in such subtle little different ways that make and it's the little tiny details that make the huge difference on whether or not it's perfect for you or horrible for you.
Yeah, totally.
And to me, like graphic design is the same thing. Like I'm not amazing at graphic design for sure, to put it lightly. But I can always tell when it's bad, but I can't always define when it's why or how it's good.
You can appreciate. It's just like, I think I totally know what you're saying. It's like when you look at something, a design piece or a plate or whatever like that. It's like I can see why it's good, but I don't know how they decided. It's all about editing. It's a black plate with one little blue thin circle on the bottom where the little part is that stands on the table, and that's it. And like, no one's even going to see that. But look how badass that is. It's like, who would have thought of that? Like, that's special. And look at the restraint. They didn't decorate the whole thing. They just that one little piece. And so I kind of, guts. That's another thing. Just seeing someone have a little guts, that's inspiring.
Indeed. All right. Do you have any advice for young graphic designers, art directors, or anything like that from your experiences? Maybe some things that went wrong that you maybe would help them to not have to go through the same problems you did?
Well, as far as going wrong or doing things wrong, oh God, I guess we all kind of learn through that. Most of that stuff was probably just having to figure out some technical things, because I was a person who had to actually create stuff as well, especially in the beginning, and I still do now. But bigger picture, for me, it is just do as much. Don't just do the stuff at your job, because what you're doing is crap and it's direct mail and no one's going to see it, and you hate your job, but you're just trying to pay rent because you're 22 and you're a graphic designer, and now you got this job and you're like, oh shit, I wish I didn't have it. All right, just keep your day job. Don't quit. Your friends are in a band, right? Like, make their poster, make their graphic that goes on their MP3 that they sell. Now, people still make vinyl. I did a lot of vinyl albums, and those were great, like 12-inch.
You also did a lot of work with film festivals as well.
Film festivals, and free, man. Like, you're not making any money off of it, but you don't give a shit, because this is the fun stuff. This is you. I remember I did a series of these charcoal sketches of tornadoes. In my mind, there were these tornadoes, but they were, very abstract. They were black. They were black and smudged and smeared and all squares, black and white. And some friends of mine put out this little 7-inch record. And I used one for the cover with this like sort of scripty typeface. They were called the Blessed or the Blessed. And it was really cool, man. Like, that was just my idea for them for free. But I've got that piece. I've got that record. It's like, now when I put that beside my stupid direct mail piece that I did for some graphic design agency that I hate, and I know I don't no longer work there anymore, it shows a good document of other stuff I was doing at the time. So it's just like, that stuff fueled my fire. And it also kept you around creatives too, man. It's like, you're not just at your job and then you go home and watch Netflix. You're out, just like all young people are. You're out with you're people, man, seeing bands, and you go to restaurants and friends are bartenders and stuff, and oh, we're doing this spoken word thing here at the bar Tuesdays, and we need like a cool flyer to pass out. It's like, go home and do that flyer, like that kind of stuff, because that keeps your brain active into other areas that you're never going to get paid to do that job, but the creative that you might come up with is really going to liberate you and give you some good things to work with.
But I mean, there's also the nature of, like, in the creative industries, like, you do some of these things for free because you love the people or you love their cause or whatever, and oftentimes those are the things that end up getting you other jobs in the future.
Absolutely. It didn't 100% happen that way with me going up to New York. I did a large painting, and it was weird and whatever, and figurative. It was just the stuff I was doing at the time. It has no realm in what I thought was advertising and graphic design. I was just trying to find any kind of graphic design job. It just happened to be advertising. When I put my book together, and I want to use this piece, man. I made it a book cover, just as a faux design piece. I even made it the title, probably the title of the piece, and that's the thing that caught my boss's eye. So that flyer you did for the spoken word thing at your friend's bar is the piece that'll, okay, you're not a total stick in the mud. This is cool.
Sure. Okay. One thing I've always wondered about, and is that, like, a lot of young people, again, my students and even myself, like, if I thought of being a designer, I would think, I want to have my own design firm. But if you sort of break it down into the industry wide, like, majority of people are the people who work at the design firms, not the heads or owners of the design firms. So, like, is that really a desirable position, like, in the end? I mean, as much as it's very romantic and dreamy to be the owner, I feel like a lot of times that might actually be substantially more stressful and possibly not as enjoyable as just being the person who does the designs.
Well, I tell you, if you're the owner and you work from home and it's you and a partner or something, that is one level, I guess, starting level. But, I would hate to spend all my off time hounding people for money, for bills to pay, and I've done freelance work before on the side, and you might not get paid for 6 months. You might not get paid, it's like you have to, and that's not very romantic. Sadly, that's
well, and you're also figuring out, like, all of your friends and contacts are potential clients.
Yeah. And yeah, true. And pretty soon you're going to find out, boy, I need a ball buster who's going to get me paid and is going to call them and hound them. And if that's what happens happen, I want to just create. I don't want to have to do this, but it's like, you're going to be doing that a lot. The thing I thought of right after you asked that, the first thing that came in my mind is like, do you want to be a chef or do you want to own a restaurant? And owning a restaurant could be, really amazing. And, all the tables, the look, everything you want, the kinds of food you want to serve. If you're a chef, well, I guess chefs can do whatever they want, but if it's somebody else's restaurant, you're gonna we're doing seafood mostly, and that's just kind of the kind of chef we need. But I love it that I get to just really worry about the work, and I don't have to worry about the clients. If I had a pool of clients over the years that you knew personally and worked with and were, hey, we really need you to work on all these projects and we've got all these great ideas, but we need you to help us, bring them to fruition. If I felt that, that would be different, but it's usually few and far between. Hopefully you can just stay inspired to create things. I'm going to get back to art and focus on it. I guess way in the beginning you were asking, do I miss it or do I do stuff on being busy with children and family is my excuse right now, but it's pretty legitimate excuse. On the weekend, one weekend I was like, I've been saving these random objects I find. I kind of got this weird thing for found object sculpture. And so I grab pieces that are interesting. My wife and I did it when we were in New York. If we found something interesting, we would grab it, and just put it on our back porch. Or we were one of the rare people that had a back porch in New York, in Brooklyn. But anyway,
it was actually a rooftop.
Yeah, it was a rooftop. Yeah. And so we would keep it, and like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It's just a cool object. And then I found these things, so I ended up doing a family sculpture of the four of us in sort of like found object totem style. And it's right behind Matt's shoulder right now. You know, it's stupid, but like I really don't care. It was fun to make, and it was vision. So it's like I kind of like it. It's like no pressure to do that. I'm trying to keep that curiosity on and I'm getting ready. And when the time comes, you know, I'll be ready to start making stuff on the side again. You know, I'll still have my day job. You know, I'll go tinkering in my studio on the weekends and when I get home, and that'll be great because I love it, you know, and I would love to get back and do more of it. So that's my goal.
I look forward to you getting back to doing it.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Well, thanks.
Thank you, Matt Dols.
Thank you, Timothy A. Jones. Is it Timothy?
When I was born.
Yeah. Birth certificate says Timothy.
Pretty much after I was born, they never said Timothy again. And my legal name, like that would be if you were a cop
or IRS
or somebody yeah, that would be Timothy. Otherwise, it's Timmy pre 11 years old.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah,
Timmy,
yeah.
That's horrible.
Although, you know, when I was up in New York, I worked with a lot of really sweet people that are lifers, have been born and raised in New York. And I don't know if it was like more of an Italian thing or a neighborhood thing or whatever, but Tommy, Bobby, Billy, Timmy, they went back to the Timmy thing. And I had this guy Sal Landry, this really cool guy, and he looked every bit somebody walked out of Goodfellas. I mean, I kid you not. He wore a suit, like a sharp suit to work when people weren't really wearing suits like that to work. The jacket, the whole thing. Very brushed white hair with like a razor's edge part, like right there in the front. Hey, Timmy. And, you know, when a guy like that calls you Timmy, you're like, hey, Sal.
Yeah.
Call me Timmy.
Got to be somebody named Sal to say something like that.
But then the finish of the story, Sal ended up, poor guy, he ended up passing away. But all the people that worked with us we're all sad about it. We miss Sal, and we're like, oh, you know, poor fellow, he had a family and stuff. He was, you know, probably 60. They started calling me Timmy in the office, like kind of in honor of him. And it was really, I was like, you know, it was kind of proud when they said it. It made me feel good. You know, it was special. So, but they're the only people, no one else since then.
All right.
Yep.
Well, thanks.
Yep. Thank you. You get the last part out. That was more for us.
No, that's fun. That's the good stuff. Are you kidding?